If you game master old school fantasy role playing games, you know you can never have enough creepies, crawlies, creatures, and cohorts in which to populate your tales. And you will find over 500 pages of monsters contained within the Adventures Dark and Deep Second Edition Core Bestiary from BRW Games. And I'll share my review right after this. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Today, I'll be sharing my review of the Adventures Dark and Deep Second Edition Core Bestiary from BRW Games. This is written by Joseph Block, and the 537-page hardcover with PDF can be had over at DriveThruRPG for $84.95. Normally, you can grab just the PDF for $24.95, but as I record this, there's currently the Monster Mayhem Sale going on at DriveThruRPG, so you can score the PDF for $18.71. Having said all that, let's swing on over to the other camera, because here I've got the Core Bestiary 2 Adventures Dark and Deep Second Edition. A couple of things to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, Joseph Block was kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the book, but I do want to give you a really good feel for what you're going to find inside. First thing we'll do is take a peek at the credits page. A lot of illustrators contributed to the book, so let's give credit where credit is due. This is the Core Bestiary for the second edition of Adventures Dark and Deep. And if you are not familiar with the game, it is an old school Renaissance fantasy role-playing game. And it is Joseph Block's take on what the second edition of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons could have looked like if Gary Gygax had remained at the helm of TSR and been the lead designer on that edition. Now, I just shared my review of the core rulebook last week, so if you are curious, by all means, give that video a peek. I will tell you, I was really, really blown away by the core rulebook. But we're not here to talk about the core rulebook. We're here to talk about the core bestiary. So we are going to start off with a little bit of information about how to utilize this book, how to use the entries throughout. And then we'll also have some information about treasure. Now, I do want to point out that all of the magic items, all the treasure tables are located in the core rulebook. They are not here in the bestiary. But it's also important to keep in mind that as far as Adventures Dark and Deep goes, all you need is the core book and the bestiary. You're all set. There is no third volume, which is your Game Master's Guide, anything like that, because all of that is included in the core rulebook. Now, each of these entries is going to have some very similar features to them. Let's grab something as an example. We'll take a peek at. Let's see. Let's go Cave Fisher. So we got the Cave Fisher here. The number, which would be encountered 1 to 4. We also get morale. So it is going to be a bonus or negative modifier, which is going to be applied to morale rolls. We've got their hit dice. Now, it's important to keep in mind in Adventures Dark and Deep Second Edition, we not only have number of hit dice, but we have different sized hit dice, ranging from a D4 to a D12. So this is 3D8, shows its armor class is 4, its movement is 10 feet, walking. What sort of magic resistance does it have? How many attacks? What damage does it deal for each of those types of attacks? Does it have any special defenses? Does it have any special attacks? Here we have Filament. It attacks as a 6d8 hit dice creature. Doesn't have any weaknesses. It is medium. It has intelligence of 3, so it is animal intelligence. Its alignment is neutral, and its XP value is 85 plus 3 for every hit point. Then we'll get into some details. The cave fisher dwells in deep caves and caverns, cementing itself into place above well-traveled paths where it can hunt for food at its leisure. Once in place, the cave fisher will not move until the source of food is obviously exhausted. When that happens, it will dissolve the cement and find a new spot where the pickings are easier. The cement used is the same sort of adhesive found on its filament line, see below, that can crawl along floors, walls, and ceilings. Two of the cave fisher's legs sport pincers, which are used to attack prey at close range. However, its more interesting form of attack is its filament line, a nearly invisible line of organic silk, similar to that of a spider, 60 feet long, which can either be dangled along a traveled pathway for prey to blunder into or shot deliberately at a target in range. The cave fisher strikes as a 6d8 hit die creature when doing so. This filament is coated with a powerful adhesive that can only be dissolved by strong alcohol or the saliva of the cave fisher itself. It is strong and yielding, requiring a +1 or better weapon to cut it, and naturally only weapons with an edge can be used for this purpose. They are incredibly thin for their strength. At a range of 20 feet or more, they are completely invisible, and at closer range, they will only be noticed 20% of the time. The filament can be withdrawn in one round and fired out again the next. Cave fishers look like large arachnids covered in black chitinous plating. They have 8 limbs, 2 of which are enormous claws, which are used to cut into prey brought in by the filament. The filament itself is fired from the large proboscis, above which are 2 green compound eyes. And there we've got an image of the cave fisher. So many of the entries are going to give us information about the environment that you would find that entity in, as well as tactics it might use, and of course, more detail about special attacks. Now, I should mention not every one of these entries is going to provide that information. There are a few throughout where we really don't get the environment that you would find them in. Some of these may not give any specific tactics as far as the creature utilizing. I would have liked to have seen a little more of that, but all in all, on average, each of these entries is going to give you plenty of information to utilize these at your game table effectively. Now, something else that's very cool about this book is the sheer number of entries within, because every page, for the most part, is going to have at least 2 entries, sometimes more. So right here, we're looking at dinosaurs. There are 4 entries on each page. Now, some of the demon lords will get a single page devoted to them, but for the most part, you are going to find that there are tons and tons of entries here. Well over 1,000 entries comprise this bestiary. And I've got to say, I think that might be the most entries out of any bestiary that's out there on the market. I can't say for certain because I have not seen every bestiary that's out there. But as far as I can see from the bestiaries I've had an opportunity to look at over the years and review, this has the absolute most packed inside this book. I mean, honestly, you would be really hard pressed to find something which is non-copyright protected not in this book. It is just stunning just how much content is in here. Now, as far as the production quality, paper stock, Very solid. I gotta say, DriveThruRPG has kind of upped their game print wise in the past couple of years, so that's very nice. But it does not have a stitched binding, just like the core rule book. So I don't know how well this is going to hold up to a lot of repeated use at your game table. So you want to keep that in mind. And as far as the artwork, not every entry has a piece of art. And of course, I can certainly understand Joseph Block and BRW Games. It's a one-man band, right? So I could see why every single entry is not going to have artwork, because that would get very, very expensive, especially for a small independent publisher. But I wish there was a little more artwork. As far as the art itself, pretty solid throughout. There are some really nice pieces of art in here. And then there are some that look like they could have fit right on into the original AD&D monster manual. But there aren't any terrible pieces of art throughout. But I will say that the style is, of course, very, very uneven. But all in all, you're not going to be sitting there disappointed with the artwork contained within. I should also mention that if you are not necessarily interested in running Adventures Dark and Deep, because it is a pretty crunchy old school Renaissance role playing game, I could easily see you converting these entries over to other OSR RPGs, not necessarily only fantasy. I could see horror, I could see science fiction being utilized with a lot of these entries. And I think you would just need to make some very minor tweaks, probably mostly the hit dice, because the hit dice having different sizes for the hit dice does throw a bit of a wrinkle in. It's one of the things that's quite a bit different with the combat in Adventures Dark and Deep. But having said that, if you're running a fantasy role playing game that's pretty much built on the skeleton of Dungeons and Dragons, at least second edition and earlier, then I think you would have a pretty easy time just using the number of hit dice, not worrying about the size of the hit die. So just giving you a quick peek throughout. This is such a cool book. It really, really is. I do have the minor quibbles, but still, all in all, this is a mighty, mighty impressive bestiary. And then we'll wrap up with some appendices. I do have to point out there is no index. I'm kind of surprised by that there is no index whatsoever. Also, if there was an index, that would be a really long index too. So that is a peek inside Adventures Dark and Deep second edition's core bestiary from BRW Games. Let's swing on over to the other camera so I can share some final thoughts as well as my review score. Guess by now it's pretty obvious I'm impressed by the core bestiary for Adventures Dark and Deep second edition from BRW Games. And I'm really blown away by the sheer number of entries in this volume. And there are well over 1,000 entries. When I say well over 1,000, I don't mean 1,002. I literally mean well over 1,000 entries. Something else that's also very impressive is this is the work of a single author. This is not a bestiary that's been compiled by the contributions of 40 different freelancers. No, this is the work of one man, Joseph Block. And if you're not overly familiar with Joseph Block, he is also the Greyhawk Grognard, who has a YouTube channel that talks about not only the Greyhawk setting, but also takes deep dives into Dungeons and Dragons and Advanced Dungeons and Dragons modules from back in the day. Really, really good work. Highly, highly recommend the channel if for some strange reason you're not aware of it. Let's get back to the bestiary. So artwork throughout, I like it for the most part. Yes, there are a few images that are sadly reminiscent of the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Monster Manual, but not many. In fact, far outweighed by the really phenomenal line art on some of these entries. And for the most part, overall, really, really solid line art, very reminiscent of role playing games from the late 1970s, early 1980s. So I definitely like that. The paper stock is also pretty heavy. DriveThruRPG has upped their game over the past couple of years as far as their print quality. So definitely dig that too. I love the fact that you can utilize this with essentially any old school Renaissance role playing game, be it fantasy, horror, science fiction, what have you. Are you going to have to make some tweaks? Yes, mainly with the hit dice, but it's not some major conversion that you're going to have to go through as long as you're utilizing this with a role playing game whose mechanics are built off of original BX or Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. You will be all set. I do have some quibbles. Now, for one, it does not have a stitched binding. That worries me a little bit. It is a glued binding. So, and you are also looking at 537 pages. That is a pretty high page count for a glued binding. Now, I can't say that this book isn't going to hold up to repeated use. I just have some concerns. Just want to mention that. Once again, I do wish that we had images for all of the entries. I certainly understand why we don't, but I do wish we did. And there are some entries that get an image where it's sort of like, well, I think everybody knows what that looks like. And I would have rather seen that sort of entry go without artwork. Well, something that might be a little more unusual would have gotten a piece of art. Not a big critique, but it is something. Also, do wish that we had more environmental information about each of these entries. The majority of the entries do have the various places that you would run across these creatures, but not all of them do. And I would also have liked to have seen tactical information about all of the entries. Just like the environments, most of these do have some information about how to utilize these creatures in combat, but there are some which don't. I would have liked to have seen all of the entries have that environmental information as well as tactical information. But all in all, this is a super impressive bestiary. So I highly recommend it. And on a scale of 0 to 10, I give the core bestiary for Adventures Dark and Deep, second edition, an 8.5 out of 10. I love the fact that you can easily use this with just about any OSR role-playing game, and most certainly just about every OSR fantasy retro clone. All right, that is it for this time out. If you enjoy the Gaming Gang and would like to support the outlet, you can do so in a few ways. First of all, by utilizing our affiliate links to the One Bookshelf websites, such as DriveThruRPG, and to do so, simply visit thegaminggang.com, click on one of our banners. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a 5% commission. And all those sales really do add up to help keep thegaminggang.com around. You can also make a one-time donation by way of PayPal and become a monthly member of our Patreon. You'll find links in the show notes. Also, down in those show notes, you're going to find an invite link to our Discord server. It's absolutely free to sign up, so be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. If you enjoyed the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell, because it'll not only let you know when I share videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central, as I share the latest in tabletop role-playing game news and more. And of course, when you're not watching videos here on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for the latest in tabletop role-playing, for the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are never going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you very much for watching. And until I see you next time, certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.